JSE ended flat, but still positive. It seems like resources stocks dragged down the JSE. Nonetheless, gold still looking good, but under a little bit of pressure. But yesterday it did go up to $1,122 an ounce.
Yes, the JSE ended near the highs of the day in terms of basically we're just trading. We had some reasonably good numbers out of the US in terms of unemployment, etc. And also we saw the rand weakening to a certain extent. I mean, it was 730 the day before. At one point in time yesterday it was hitting about 750. So that was obviously something good that for the exporters and obviously good for the miners, etc.
Okay, just explain a little bit about that rand pressure that we're seeing, that volatility. Somewhere this morning it was around 7.4. I mean, people would still say that's way too high, with most pundits saying in about a few months' time we should expect the rand to be at 8.50. That's what exporters are calling for, that's what exporters need. But just this movement influenced by the dollar, what's happening internationally?
Yes, the rand has been extremely volatile. I mean, ever since Pravin Gordhan's speech a couple of weeks ago, you saw it going from about below 730 to above 820, and the 820 was an erroneous trade in Japan, but still, I mean, it was trading easily close to 8 rands, and then suddenly it comes from 8 rands again back to below, almost 730 in about a week. So there's a great deal of volatility in the market, partially due to dollar strength and dollar weakness, but also partially due to some of the things that are coming out in this country in terms of, talks about currencies, etc. Sort of talks about the electricity, and also, I mean, sometimes we've been downgraded. I mean, yesterday we had our banks downgraded by Moody's, and that obviously weakened the currency a bit.
Okay, let's look at what's happened internationally. US jobless data has come out for the recent months. At 502,000, it's not quite as bad as what was expected. Most experts had expected a figure of 510,000 jobs, but still, at over 10% unemployment, America's in serious trouble.
Yes, it is. I don't know if America, the economy as a whole, is going to be too much affected by these job losses, because if you look at the productivity numbers that came out a bit earlier, the people that are working a lot harder, and therefore the amount they've been producing is not diminishing just to a large extent. I mean, the GDP is still growing. However, for those people that are unemployed, it's going to be quite difficult. And obviously, if they're saying 10-point-something% unemployment, they actually mean closer to about 20% real unemployment, because people are going to be underemployed, employed in part-time jobs, taking jobs they don't want to be doing, etc., etc. In terms of those people, obviously it's going to be quite difficult for them. But in terms of the economy of the US as a whole, you find the markets.
But let's unpack that, because it's a debatable issue that you're raising. We see corporate results coming through. It suggests that there's improved productivity within corporate America, even within the manufacturing sector. But we're told that the American economy, the global economy, is fueled by the spending of the American consumer, and the demand of 70% of American consumers is essentially what drives the world economy. So when American consumers are increasingly under strain because they're losing their jobs, or they're not sure about the certainty of their job, we should be very cautious about our sense of optimism of US recovery.
That is true. I mean, it's about 72% I think of the US economy is driven by its consumer sector. However, I think my basic argument is this: it's easier to get someone to buy a laptop than to build one. The Chinese are building laptops. To get them to buy laptops is not going to be as difficult as one might think. I mean, you basically have a situation now, all you need is for the East Asians basically to start buying stuff. Governments are buying at the moment, and just got to get the consumer in Asia to start spending as well. Their savings rate is incredibly high. If you can get them to start spending a bit more, obviously things will change.
Okay, let's move back to circumstances back home. We're looking at this interesting and phenomenal rise in gold, all-time highs, but mining is still under pressure in South Africa. Annualized figures of 15% year on year. Just explain what's going on here.
Well, our gold mines have been around for a long time. And, gold's not a renewable resource. There's only so much of it in the ground, and we've been taking it out of the ground for a long, long time. And therefore, the stuff that's left over is very hard to get at. And secondly, this Eskom debacle. I mean, the price increases they talked about are going to affect the electricity, the cost structure of these gold mines dramatically. And the rand's also quite strong at the moment. Yes, therefore, I think people are bullish on gold as a whole, but they are not very bullish on the gold mines. There's been too many, disappointing stories in the past about the productivity, about the cost structure of these gold mines, and I think that people right now are looking at them and thinking, I'd rather just buy the gold ETF than just go into like a Harmony or a GFI, etc.
Is it just only gold that's affected? What about other resources? Platinum, for instance, although the price is not quite what we saw by the end of last year, it's still doing fairly well.
Oh yes, platinum's rebounded quite well. I mean, platinum, if you look at the cost structure or the revenue structure of the platinum mines, you'd find about 3/4 of their revenue actually comes from the automobile sector. With the cash for clunkers deal we've had out there, with the better than expected buying of these automobiles that we're seeing around the world, it's obviously quite good for the platinum sector. If it holds on to the future, obviously platinum is going to be quite good. There are some doubts about how strong the automobile sales are going to be, because the cash for clunkers plan may, or not just in the US but around the world, may have just absorbed excess demand, not just from this year but from next year as well, and it could actually weaken demand for next year. So we've got to see how that turns out.
I mean, we're seeing very modest recovery in vehicle sales. VW, for instance, saying that they had improved growth, especially in China, produced over 440,000 cars. Is that an indication of what's to happen in the automotive sector, and therefore what could happen to platinum?
Yeah, the VW numbers are a bit weird. If you look at them, they actually what happened was Porsche tried to buy VW, Porsche couldn't buy VW, then VW bought Porsche. Therefore, VW's numbers now include Porsche's numbers. So that's a bit of a thing. I don't know if they actually worked out properly, and if the increase that you're seeing in VW is actually, because it bought Porsche or because of actual growth in sales. But VW, I think now is not the largest car company in the world. They've taken over from Toyota. But in terms of what's going to happen in the future, yes, VW has a great presence in China, but they haven't done as well in the US, and Toyota does better there. But like I said, a lot of the stuff is driven by these stimulus packages out there, and it's cheaper to buy a car right now, or was a couple of months ago, than it will be to buy it next year because of the stimulus packages out there. So what's going to happen to demand when these packages go away?
Just a final story. Vodacom, MTN and Cell C finally toe the line, but not quite to the levels that government had expected. We're seeing that interconnect fees as from early next year will be 89 cents peak time, 77 cents off peak time. It's a reduction of about 38 cents. Government had said that they wanted 50 whole cents by the end of November.
Yes, there were hopes. There were hopes around the country. I think that for the first time, government's actually going to be tough on the telecommunications sector, and you'd actually see a real movement happening there. If you compare our cost to virtually any other country in the world, I mean, there are a few exceptions in the Gulf, etc., where the cost of telecommunications are higher than us, but virtually every other country in the world is cheaper than us, and it's insane just how high our costs are compared to every other country in the world. And for instance, look at the new pipelines that came in, those overseas undersea pipelines, for international broadband. They've come in, prices haven't fallen. And why is that? How can you have your costs going down?
Why is that? Because the mobile phone operators are saying that they've had to build the backbone infrastructure, and they need to recover those costs, and effectively those operational costs are being factored in.
Yes, but the thing is, they factored in the cost of building that infrastructure when they were thinking of a much lower subscriber base. Our subscriber base has been dramatically high, and why are our costs so much higher than other countries? I mean, you'd find surprising countries in the world. India, places like Kenya, Ethiopia, under some measures, are in some ways cheaper than us. I mean, why is that?